Eat bold with Subway fiery footlong subs. So hot they'll burn the wimp right out of you. Try the new turkey jalapeno melt, a fiery twist on a legendary flavor, and the bold, delicious buffalo chicken, backed by popular demand. Subway. Eat fresh. The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
this is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
It might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. Sunny day here in Southern California, as always, and visiting from the East Coast, in studio for the first time ever, the year of Lombardi. From NFL.com, Mike Lombardi. What's happening?
Not much. This crosses it off my bucket list. This is one of those.
This is good.
Inside the Bat Cave. I didn't need this Commissioner Gordon sleeping gas, so I was pretty happy with that. Yeah.
This is like going to the Sopranos house for you.
Exactly. In fact, the gardener was out front. It was perfect.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, it was
They're
perfect.
always around. Tuesday is the day. They try to time it for when I have a podcast.
Perfect. I assume that's the gardener that broke his arm falling off the tree, right?
Did that happen?
Sal Vitro was his name in The Sopranos. Yeah.
Week 3 preseason finished last week, and that's really the only preseason week that matters because teams actually play their guys for a half, and you kind of get a feel. Now, you don't want to rush to judgment with this stuff. But on the other hand, you see some things and you go, ooh.
Yeah.
And do you take more away from the ooh, or do you take more away from the oh? Like Arian Foster, do you put more stock in somebody like that, or do you put more stock in somebody who looks terrible?
I think certainly the third preseason game tells us something, but last year the Giants looked so good in the preseason, and then they started really well and fell apart. I think you have to temper it a little bit week to week. I think there's some indicators that are really clear. Aaron Rodgers is going to be sensational. To beat the Packers, you're going to have to get the game into the 30s to score that much. I don't know if you can do that. I think their defense isn't great, but their offense is so good it can compensate.
So you're feeling, and I'm kind of feeling the same way, that they have a little 2009 Saints feel to them. The difference, obviously, is that they're not going to be in a dome,
right?
Which is bad for a cold weather.
Yeah, but they play well in the weather, and I think that they're going to have to manufacture defense like the Saints did last year. The Saints had to play defense with a bad offense. They would have been not a great defense. But because their offense could get the lead on people, they could manufacture pass rush and blitzes and scheme and always play with the lead. And I think that's what the Packers are facing.
Would you say that they are your NFC favorite at this point, or are you still like the Saints?
I think the Saints this year are a better team than they were last year. They have more depth on their football team. I think they know who they are now. They're going to be tough to beat, especially with the dome. But I think the Packers have the kind of game to beat them. They can match them point for point.
No worry of a hangover with them?
It doesn't appear that way. I like Sean Payton's whole demeanor this offseason. He's got a sense of toughness to him. I think he understood that, from being with Bill Parcells, I think Sean took a lot of the traits that Bill was very good at, especially forgetting last year and moving forward. There's going to be some of it hangover, but the team's changed. But I think he's because of Drew Brees, if they're healthy, they're very good. Their offensive line's good. Their defensive line will be better this year. They'll get some players back. To me, the team that looks like that benefits the most from getting players back are the Bengals.
Oh. And they have Odom coming back this year.
They have Odom coming back. They've got Ray Malanga coming back. They've got a bunch of players that they didn't have last year back with their football team. Antonio Bryant, that's a loss, but I think Shipley, the receiver in the slot, really gives them another dimension.
He looks pretty good. And the Bryant thing, I think, was, would you say, the weirdest story of the preseason? I don't ever remember a team waiving a free agent who didn't play a game. Yeah,
and gets $7 million and takes it home, or $8 million and goes home with it. It's amazing.
Just a bad medical diagnosis?
Bad on all parts. I think it was the Tampa didn't re-sign him because of the knee, and they let him out there, and Cincinnati did a bad job. I think their team doctor's probably in jeopardy because they passed him on a physical. That's a mistake. Secondly, they put him on the field after he's passed the physical. Now his salary this year has got to come back to him because you can't waive a player who's injured.
Right. And what's funny? There's an irony to it. They're so cheap, they probably hired the cheapest team doctors on the planet. It's probably some guy making $20 an hour. And he ends up misdiagnosing and costing them $8 million.
You would think that they would say, instead of losing $8 million, why don't we put $1 million in research and development and have a legitimate personnel department that could find this stuff out instead of trying to cut corners. And when you cut corners, it costs them $7 million.
It's called karma.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think any team that's really wired in the league knew Brian had some knee troubles. I think they thought he could overcome them, but that team doctor certainly allowed him on the field. He allowed him to pass the physical. And when you lose $8 million, Mike Brown's money or not, that's tough to do.
I've been throwing myself into the research the last 6-7 days, and you make an interesting point in the Bengals, because the team that they were probably the first 5 weeks, and then no Chris Henry. This is before he dies. He got hurt, but he was their deep threat. He's gone. I'm going to mangle the name. I'm terrible with the Samoan names.
I'm terrible with all the names.
But the two of us. Malaluga?
Malawanga, I thought
Malawanga. That was a loss. Yeah. And then Odom was playing out of his mind.
Right.
He was probably the best D lineman in the league the first couple games, and then he gets knocked out. They hung on. They make it to the wild card. They really didn't have any ammo in that Jets game.
Right.
Couldn't throw the ball. Couldn't really rush the passer. But now, interesting division. Yeah, because I'm not ready to rule out Pittsburgh.
And they get Keith Rivers back, who they lost during the season. This is a team that goes up into Green Bay and beats Green Bay in Green Bay when Green Bay was a good team last year. We all knew that. So I think they're a sleeper team. And like you said, offensively, they get some of these weapons that they didn't have. Grisham, the tight end, will certainly help them.
Because they lost their tight end during the Hard Knocks.
Reggie Kelly, they lost all those guys. So and then they had Benson was still able to run the ball. So we know they can run the ball. And now it's on Carson Palmer to make some plays. I think they're dangerous. The NFC North, I think, all respect to the NFC East, I think the AFC North is the best division.
Who's the fourth team? I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank. Cleveland.
Cleveland.
We can write them off again, right?
But I think they're going to be harder to beat this year. I think they're well organized on offense. They look more efficient. I know Jake Delhomme will make his mistakes and make turnovers.
But that's your expert opinion?
But that is my expert opinion, yeah. They paid me a lot of money to say Jake Delhomme will turn the ball over.
I don't know. I haven't seen enough evidence yet.
But I think they're much better. They're much better organized. They'll be hard to beat. They're good in the kicking game. You can't kick the ball to Joshua Cribbs.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be a problem, and I really believe those other three teams are really good.
How are they looking on the blue chip scale?
Well, they don't have very many blue chips. They've got so many young players that
Cribbs, Joe Thomas.
But they have Joe Thomas. Certainly he's a good player. Their offensive line's much better this year than it was last year.
Yeah.
And if they can get a skilled player to make a play or two, they can come back. And I don't think they're just going to not manage the game. They played down the stretch the way they needed to play. I think this year offensively they look much better.
I watched some of their preseason game, and Cribbs made a phenomenal catch in the sidelines. It made me wonder, does he have some Steve Smith potential? Remember, 8-9 years ago, No, it wasn't that long. It was 2003. Yeah, so 7-8 years ago, Steve Smith, they started using him as a receiver. He was initially a return guy, and he became, Steve Smith.
And they've utilized him at a lot of different positions, the Wildcat, and they realize he's got to get the ball. They've worked on him at receiver. I think the offense is tailored for him to get the ball 10, 12 times a week offensively, and he'll make a play or two. He's hard to tackle. He's faster than most people think he is. So I think they're a little bit of a problem for people. They're no easy gimme putt now.
They in Pittsburgh, it seems like people just, I don't know. They have the infrastructure in place. Roethlisberger's back by week 5 probably. Why should I think that this team's not going to win 10 or 11 games?
Well, they can, because their defense can carry them the first month of the season. September, you can be 2-2 in September and rally back. Look, the Titans were 1-3 a few years ago, made it to the conference championship game. Yep. You can lose in September and compensate. I think the Steelers are going to come down to keeping Troy Polamalu healthy. They've got to keep him on the field. Their corners have got to make some plays in terms of the passing game, which they did the other night against Denver. They look better defensively than they've been in a while. So I think Pittsburgh's going to have to find a way to win games with their kicking game, their defense, and run the ball a little bit better, which they did the other night.
Is Polamalu, are you worried about Bob Sanders' potential with him, or they just can't keep him on the field?
Yeah, you worry about that all the time with him, because he plays the game with such violence, and he's all over the field. I mean, his range is unlimited. He's the center fielder who can cover the alleys all the way, and they utilize him in a way to where he's always going to be in contact. He's never away from the football. It's not a Darren Sharper free safety who's making plays on the ball. This is a guy who's reckless and abandoned in his style of play when he tackles.
I do think that this is, the Football Outsider's done a really nice job of moving the stats moving forward, and we have all these different ways to evaluate, and we're all studying tape, and we get the NFL Network now. The one thing that we never seem to factor in enough is injury rate. And, I look at somebody like Bolden on Baltimore, and everybody's so excited about him. Oh, he's the missing piece. I want to see him play for 5 straight months without getting hurt. And we never factor that in. And Polamalu, I think, is another example. Oh, he's back. But, all right, well, this guy's been banged up a little. And I think in football you can pass a point where it's not just an accident.
Right. That's like the Giants last year. They lose Kenny Phillips in their secondary. They look really explosive last year in September. They lose him. They're not the same team. They give up all those points in Dallas, but they win the game. I think injuries are certainly playing a toll. I think the Raiders are an example of a team that's a better football team this year. No depth at all. Once they lose 1 or 2 guys, which they always will, all teams lose players. It's hard to go through a season without depth. They caught up to Cincinnati at the end of the year. Last year, they lost all those players. It's tough to play. New Orleans was able to manufacture corners, but their offense carried their lack of corners. But down the stretch, it affected them. That's why they lost games.
And somehow Indianapolis, who never has depth, has been able to avoid that problem for years and years and years and years, which I've never totally understood because they make their team top-heavy, Christine Hendricks style.
She did look good at the Emmys.
Whereas I think the Patriots have been more, you have your A players, your B players, and your C players, and the Patriots try to load up on the B guys. Whereas the Colts seem like they gravitate toward the A guys, and if these guys get hurt, then screw it, we'll be done.
I think the Colts realize who they are. They're going to cater. That's why when they draft a receiver in the first round and everybody screams for them to draft defense, they know who they are. They're going to build this team around Peyton Manning, and the key for them is really to make sure that teams don't know how to play them all the time. If you kick off to the Colts first, that's probably the best strategy because the Colts are a team that you want to try to dominate the last 6 possessions of the game, not think you can win the first half. Manning's too good with the ball in his hands at the end. You've got to take the end of the half, 4 minutes to go in the game, have the ball, score, go into halftime, get the ball to start the half, and build a 14-point lead or widen the lead, because the only way you're really going to stop him is by widening the gap. He's going to catch up to you. He's too good. He makes too many throws. He doesn't make any mistakes.
He figures it out eventually. And that was the Jets' biggest mistake last year, was that in that AFC title game. They stayed with the same thing, and by the midway through the second quarter, it's like, all right, I got this.
Right, and they knew how to protect it, and they got comfortable with it, and then they lose the corner, and Lito Shepherd's got to go out there, and they attack him. To beat the Colts, you have to take it down to about a 4-possession game in the second half, and you've got to weather the storm in the beginning of the game. Too many times you go in Indianapolis and you think, we got to win this, so let's start, we'll get the lead, we'll make him play catch-up. Didn't work for Miami. Try to win the time possession. Didn't work for Miami. You got to strategically play the game in a certain way. The way to play is what the 49ers did, although they didn't score. Play great in the red area and dominate the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half, and then play the game as almost a halftime game.
Yeah. NFC North odds for the division. The Ravens are minus 130. Steelers plus 240. Bengals plus 300. Bengals pretty intriguing at plus 300.
Well,
that division seems up for grabs. I've done a 180 on them since the last week when we did this with Sal.
I think that they're really all competitive. Cincinnati went 6-0 last year, and I don't think any team's going to go 6-0 within that division this year. It's too hard. It's too tough. The injuries are going to play a certain factor. Baltimore's corner situation is very suspect. If Cincinnati's offense becomes explosive, and Jordan Shipley is a really good slot corner, Baltimore doesn't have a good matchup in that game. Baltimore can't really handle that, so that becomes Cincinnati gets the advantage, assuming Shipley steps up.
And Cincy plays them well too.
Even when they were bad.
Yeah.
Baltimore has to find a corner in the next 10 days before the season starts. Somebody serviceable they can put out there that they feel like, and they'll try to make a trade. They're trying desperately to make a trade for a corner right now. They'll probably pull the pin on one here within another 6 to 7 days.
That's not a good sign.
No, well, that's what they.
You don't want to be like frantically searching for a corner a week before the season.
Well, they couldn't get one in the draft. They wanted one. They couldn't get one done. So everything kind of.
How's it possible? There was a whole bunch of them at the end of the round.
Well, I think they probably didn't like him or rated him high enough to pick him. Kareem Jackson went before him. They slid down into the first round. So, they're going to have to try to make do. They can. And I think the burden now falls on Joe Flacco. They've got to be a team a little bit like the Saints who can get a lead so they can blitz and scheme pass rush as opposed to letting their corners cover. New England's the opposite. New England's corners can cover. I'm not sure they can rush now.
I don't trust Flacco yet. I trust him against Cleveland up 28-10 at home. Situations like that. I don't know if he has he reminds me a little bit of Schaub. I don't know if he has those chops in the last 4 minutes yet. I need to see it from him.
He's going to have to
win one of those.
He's got to lead the team back on a fourth quarter drive and do it. I mean, he had the
last year.
He did it in the Minnesota game, but it was a long field goal. He couldn't quite get him in to make it field goal range. I think he's got to prove himself to your teammates. As much as we sit here and look at the teams, I think the players are waiting for a guy to really get the baton passed to him and say, okay, you're the guy, we can do it.
This is obviously a stupid observation because I'm just watching on TV, but you see some of these quarterbacks and you're watching them in the huddle and just the way they carry themselves and you think like, oh, he's got it.
Yeah.
He's got this. And I don't feel that way with him.
No, but then when you watch Tim Tebow, who may never be a great player, but
he's got it.
He's got it.
And that's why I think he's going to be good because you and I have talked about this, but I think this position at this point is like 78% just how you carry yourself.
Yeah. And the confidence you bring with you in the huddle. Yeah. And the little
You're
things,
a leader.
Right. The little things you say to the left tackle as you break the huddle. Hey, I need a little more time on this throw to be able to handle it. So
that was Lombardi's phone, not mine.
And to be able to handle it. So I think that's what Joe Flacco has to do. He's got to show that he's not a kid who transferred from Pitt to Delaware, that he's unique, that he can lead the team.
So who do you like out of those three?
I like the...
You need to get that?
No, I don't need to get it. I don't know how to turn off the BlackBerry. I like Baltimore. Even though I talked about their injuries, I like Baltimore, and I think Cincinnati's a very dangerous team. I think Cincinnati, I'm a little bit like you were last year about Carson Palmer. I'm not sold he's the Carson Palmer of old. If he were, this team could be a Super Bowl team.
Don't know what to make out of him because you look at who his receivers were the last half of the year and in that playoff game, and who was going to get open for him.
And he was hurt.
And now he's not hurt. And I do think Owens is going to be decent for them.
Well, I think
at the very least, you have to worry that he's on the field, and they didn't have a guy like that
I think
than Ocho.
That's always the case with a player with a significant stature. You've got to worry about him.
I think Moss is like that too. I don't know if Moss is the same player that he was 3 years ago, but he's there and he looks like Randy Moss. He's got the uniform number. You got to at least worry about him.
When you're watching tape of him, you see how fast he runs. You say we still have. There's only 3 or 4 routes. It's like Steve Smith of the Panthers. There's routes that players run that you have to defend. Moss has a very small route tree he runs. Steve Smith has a very small route tree. You have to defend those routes. And as long as the routes they run, he can still do. Like Moss can still vertically get down the field. You got to worry about him because Tom Brady's proved last week he can throw the ball down the field.
And he can do that straight down and then curl.
Yeah, he's got about 3 routes. You don't want him running slants and going in there and getting a linebacker hit him. He's got 3 or 4 routes he can definitely handle, and that's really all he can do. But they are effective and they build the offense around it.
The Pats, it looks like they finally had a good draft. That's the good news.
Yeah, I think last year's draft is going to show up even more.
Well, and then Brandon Tate. Now that looks like they really might have hit the
Patrick Chung and Merriweather are going to be could be Pro Bowl safeties for a long time.
Oh, thank you.
I think their 2 inside linebackers, Brandon Spikes and Gerard Mayo, I think are outstanding. Spikes is limited in terms of foot quickness.
That's an understatement.
Yes.
He got beaten to the spot by the fullback in the exhibition game yesterday on a little simple play action.
But he is really a good player.
Yeah.
He is really a physical.
A
little slow. It hurts him in the kicking game more than it hurts him with their defense because they know how to scheme around him.
The big thing is the tight ends. Brady just hasn't had that tight end threat they drafted Graham. They drafted Ben Watson. They're never able to find him that guy who can just curl in 8 yards, 7 yards, and that's what Brady's specialty is. Right. He's great at that.
And tight ends are like the horses in chess. They can do so many different things, and they create a matchup problem for the coordinator. If he puts 3 tight ends on the field with Moss in a one-back set, and he's got all sorts of different combinations out there, then all of a sudden, how do you match that? They can spread them out. Do you go to nickel? Do you match them all? The other thing that adds into this dimension of the tight ends is they can run block this year. Last year, they weren't very good run block.
Yeah.
But now they get off the ball a little bit more. I'm not sure who the back's going to be, but they can run block. They're more physical, and that helps the tight ends. And I think they're a dangerous team to match up to offensively, especially since every week they change their offense. They tailor their offense to what you can't do, and those tight ends give them incredible flexibility.
The offense that I want to see them run is the 2 tight ends, Gronkowski and Hernandez, with 3 receivers, with Welker, Edelman, and Moss. This is a Madden offense. This is one of my favorite Madden offenses. The 5 receiver, no running back. and you have the protection on the line in case you might need it, you might not, and they can go out and do little. I think they're going to be unstoppable with that offense. I don't think they're going to be able to stop anyone, but I think that 5 wide receiver, 5 whatever is going to be fantastic.
And that's what made the Saints so tough last year, because you didn't have players to match up to the Saints receivers. Marquise Colston was like a power forward in basketball. Nobody could really cover him. And then you had little Lance Moore in the slot, like a point guard. You couldn't really cover him. And then you had Meacham and Devery Hender, small forward type guys who could vertically run down the field and make plays. When they went to that formation, they were tough to defend. And then Shockey's the kind of mismatch player. So you flex him out in the goal line. When you have players that you don't have enough defensive backs to match up to, like New Orleans does, and now like New England does with these tight ends, it becomes a very difficult problem, because when you put 3 tight ends or 2 tight ends on the field, say you go to that formation with no back, people will go to nickel because you're not going to run the ball.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now Brady knows if you're in man, if you're in zone based on your alignment, he knows it immediately from the snap. He knows he can be in a 6 or 7 man protection because he's got tight ends in the game, and now he can attack the one area of weakness.
I mean, not to compare myself to Brady, but I've made a Madden comeback this year. I've been playing a little in the treadmill, and I'm unstoppable in the 5 wide receiver, because much like Brady, I can check at the line and be, oh, you're going to do that? Well, then I'm going to send my tight end here. And I think that's the one thing that him, Manning, Breeze, I don't know who else is on that level of people who can just stand behind the center and say, oh, you're going to really do that on me? Yeah. I'm going to do this then.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody else is that empowered. My question with him is, he just looked so slow last year with the knee brace. He looks better this year. It looks like he's moving better. But it seems like if they're going to go 5 receiver, teams are just going to, all right, we're going to hit the hell out of you.
Yeah, we're
going to hit you every single time and see if you move.
But they run enough bubble screens and enough quick screens to keep people off balance. He's got enough parts of his offense. The other factor is Edelman being able to come in the backfield and come in motion, and he can carry the football.
Yeah.
So you got to be prepared for the receiver run around. It's the Florida really offense is what you're going to see more in New England. We know Belichick spends a lot of time down there. I think you'll see elements of that work its way in, especially with these tight ends that can do some damage, because he can get into protection he wants to get into. And if you blitz him, you better make sure you got Moss covered on the vertical, because he can protect it. That's what, everybody wants to go to 5 receivers, but if you don't have guys who can block, the tight ends have to be able to pass protect, and both these guys showed this summer they could.
Really fun offenses potentially this year. I think the Pats are going to be extremely fun to watch. Saints, obviously. The Ravens have potential.
Yeah.
Colts, no question. Green Bay, I think, is going to be really fun. Unfortunately, Minnesota, I think, is too banged up. I'm fascinated by Dallas, because if Felix Jones does anything, it just seemed Romo's been in there for a while now. That offense might be really fun. I think the McNabb-Shanahan combo is going to be fun. Yeah. Who else are you excited for?
Well, going back, I think a little bit on Minnesota. I think they need their receivers back to be explosive, and I think Brett Favre early in the season has to prove he can move around a little bit.
Don't you think, like, between you got the Harvard thing, you have Rice out half the year, you have Favre who's already getting shots in his ankle. Like, this whole thing stinks to me.
Yeah, I think he's got to prove he can move around, or else people are going to keep attacking him and keep bringing force on him and make him have to take a lot of hits, and hopefully he can keep getting up, because that's what people want to do. I think the one thing the rules have done is change to where offenses are now explosive, and it all comes down to matchups. It comes down to what matchup you have. Jermichael Finley's an incredible mismatch player that teams have. And when you have those kind of guys all over the league, Houston's always a fun offense to watch, but they're only fun to watch for 3 quarters. In the fourth quarter, when the game gets tight, they get tight too. And
I agree with you on Houston, because I watched a lot of that Houston-Dallas game on Saturday night, and because Foster looks like he's legit. They have some potential. Jacoby Jones also looks like he's legit, and they're in the Dome. Schaub already had a good year last year.
They're very good, and I think I made a proposal for a trade. If I was Houston, I would try to trade for Albert Haynesworth, because they need that one guy inside to get that physical player. Washington needs this vertical outside receiver. Shanahan's kind of done with this guy, but they need a guy who can vertically get down the field. They don't really have that, and so I made that proposal of a trade. I think they need one more defensive player, and especially early in the season, as they come over the injuries and the linebacker is out with the
Cushing.
Cushing's out.
Pretty good defense if
they had a physical player inside.
Poison though.
Well, but if he gets out of the environment and you find a way to motivate him, he certainly can turn things around.
I don't know if you can motivate somebody who's guaranteed.
No, I think it's tough when he looks at that. And that's why Tennessee didn't give him the money. When he looks at his bank account, he says, boy, I'm rich. I don't need to work very hard.
Yeah. That's how I feel.
But you work everywhere. You work every day.
I was kidding. AFC East. Pats now in the lead, plus 120. Jets plus 140. Dolphins plus 300. To me, same thing as the Bengals thing. To me, the Dolphins could just as easily win that division as the other two, correct?
Oh, well, the Dolphins beat the Jets twice, although no Jet fan will admit that. They have amnesia on those two games last year.
The Jets fans think they went 15-1 last year.
I know.
They have no idea they went 9-7. What? I thought we went 15-1.
I think the challenge for the Jets is this. I think they have to define who they are on offense quickly.
Yeah.
I think they have this illusion because they have all these skill players, and they are talented skill-wise. But for them to be successful, they have to bring in Mark Sanchez. They have to get back to being.
But that's what they did the last month, remember? But they basically just ran the.
Now they're acting like they can just put it out there, and Mark Sanchez can run the offense. And Brian Schottenheimer's a really good head coach, a really good head coaching candidate. He's a really good play caller. There's a sense, hey, if I make this offense look explosive, I'll be in line for those jobs. All he needs to do is win, and he'll be in line for those jobs. I think it's a tough spot for Brian to be in because he's got all these receivers and playmakers that they want to try to get the ball to, when the reality of it is they should run 3 in a row, punt, and let their defense control vertical field position, let their special teams win games, and kind of win ugly.
And which, by the way, is how they almost made the Super Bowl.
Right.
Because they did the identity shift just in time.
Right.
And then that worked, and they limited Sanchez. And he does throw a nice deep ball. I'm not sure he should be throwing more than 20 times a game. I think you're in trouble.
It's interesting. I have an article coming out tomorrow on NFL.com that I compare Sanchez to a player his first year going back in the early 90s. And it's remarkable. If you just look at the stats, now the player I'm comparing it to ended up not playing very well for the rest of his career. But my point of the column is this, is they better figure out who Mark Sanchez is quickly, or else he's going to hurt the team. If they think they can just play any way they want, then the interceptions start to mount. It's going to affect them. So I think that's the Jets' order of business. Forget Darrelle Revis. Forget all the other stuff. They got to figure out the offense that Sanchez is good at, and they got to demand that he runs it. And then Miami's an interesting team because when you watch him this summer, they've had a lot of drops. Brandon Marshall's got the drops right now. He hasn't caught the ball very well. But their offense is very good. It has potential to be explosive. Henny's very much improved. And
year 3 is Sperano, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that now it's like he's got you and still what your team's going to be by year 3.
And we know they're going to be physical. We know they're going to be tough, and they're going to be hard to beat. And they won't beat themselves. So they're tough. And I think New England's the kind of team, because they're so young, and I think people lose sight of this a little bit. When you have an older team, it's hard to practice, and it's hard to get better during the season because you got a lot of old guys. But when you have a young team like New England does, you can practice hard during the season, and you can improve on Sundays, and you get better. So by November and December, you're really an improved team. Typically, the curve of an NFL team goes, you start out with your execution high in September and October, but because you can't practice, November and December, you wane a little bit. Your pad level gets too high. You're not as physical as you need to be. Young teams can be physical. Young teams can keep their pad level down late in the year when they practice, and I think that's where the Patriots are going to gain their advantage. The second 8 games, not the first.
But, I mean, aren't the Patriots a young team and an old team at the same time?
Well, they are old at one or two positions, but they're really a young team everywhere else. I mean, they're trying to match up. I think Ron Brace has got to come along for them and give them an extra defensive lineman, a young player. Right. But, Moss is an older player, but they've got a lot of young receivers in this group.
Have to throw Brady in the mix.
And Brady's older, but, Brady and Peyton Manning are within a year of each other, so they're really not that old. And they get better as the time goes on. So I think that's why Miami's so effective. Because when you play Miami, they make you play right. They make you play left-handed, and you have to beat them. They're just not going to give you the game. They're tough to play.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about them.
They're good.
I guess it's going to come down to the QB.
It'll come down to the consistency of their skill players. Is Ronnie Brown able to be the back that they really want him to be? And can Brandon Marshall not have the drops like he's had a little bit this summer, especially on third critical downs? I think those are the key elements. Last year they led the National Football League in rushing attempts and passing completions, which is the number one stat Parcells looks at and a lot of people look at.
What is it again?
It's rushing attempts and pass completions. You add those two numbers together. If you're over 51, you've probably won the game.
Huh.
You take those two numbers. You take those two numbers. You add them up, and when you do that, that means your execution's really good. That means you can execute. You can perform. The Dolphins were tremendous at that. They led the league last year. New England was 3rd or 4th in the league doing that. But you got to be able to make big plays out of it. That's why Marshall's there.
Do you like Henny?
I like Henny a lot. I think Henny is become more accurate this summer. I think he's got a confidence about him, that demeanor you talked about that you want Joe Flacco to have. I think I see it in Henny in the huddle. I think that they'll demand that Henny does it. Now they have to get Ronnie Brown's got to be the big player for them. Ricky Williams will still be the guy he always is. He's still the best back on the team. Ronnie Brown's got to be the explosive player.
What is it about when receivers change teams? It never seems to go well, the good ones. There's no rational reason for it, and yet it's 75-80% of the time it seems like it doesn't work.
I have to do a project on that because I wanted to write a column on that too.
Yeah, do a project on it.
Because when has there been a receiver traded for a lot of draft picks that worked out for the team that traded?
I can't think of
And I watched Vincent Jackson on NFL Network talk about how he wanted, and I'm thinking, when has this ever worked before? When has a guy gone from one system to another system and really go back to John Jefferson when he wanted to get traded? He went to Green Bay. That was a disaster.
Alvin Harper. I mean, there's a million of them.
They go on and
Carl
on.
Pickens.
Yeah. So Roy Williams.
Roy Williams.
I mean, that was a lot of draft choice. So
Joey Galloway twice, I think.
Yeah, and look at these receivers that you find as free agents in the draft. I mean, Jose Cruz with the Giants. I mean, he looks like a really good young receiver. They get him as a college free agent.
Yeah, that guy's actually might play, huh?
Yeah, he's going to play. He's going to play.
I want to talk about the Giants in a second, but AFC South quickly. Colts are minus 220, Texans plus 350, Titans plus 400. The Texans, would you say they're one trade away? Or I mean, this Kubiak-Schaub combo, I thought last year was going to be it for them. And now they're back.
Well, you talk injuries. I mean, that was the first time Schaub has played 16 games.
Yeah.
Very difficult for him to do. Can he stay healthy? I'm not sure he can do it 2 years in a row. They have a very good football team, and Gary's an outstanding play caller. I don't like their toughness overall of their defense. I think when the game gets into crunch time, they become a little bit timid. They can't control the line of scrimmage with their defense. So I've never bought the Houston Texans hook, line, and sinker. I think they need a little bit more nasty on defense, especially in their front, to be able to go and control game. They win with their offense, but they don't have that great other rusher to go with Mario Williams that really it really gives them the scheme way, the way that the Saints can do it or Green Bay might be able to do it.
Tennessee do anything for you?
I like Tennessee. I think Tennessee's a good team. I think don't underestimate Jeff Fisher. Don't underestimate how he coaches. I think Mike Heimendinger, offensive coordinator there, has done a great job with Vince Young of building an offense around them.
That's what it seems like to me. They have an identity, and they gained it during the last half of last year where Vince is going to run it or throw it. Johnson's going to run it. They're going to pound you. They're going to control the clock. And it's going to be a game you're probably not going to enjoy that much when you're playing them.
And I think they're better on defense. They're much faster on defense. Yeah. They're more athletic on defense than they've been. Jeff got involved last year in the defense, coached them. Chuck Cecil will be a second-year defense coordinator. He'll be better. So I think this is a team that you can't underestimate. They know how to play. They know how to play Indianapolis. They understand it. Fisher's teams always get better as the season goes along. I think too many people underestimate them, but they're a good team. James Jones, their defensive tackle inside, can be a force this year. I think he's going to be a really good player this year. He was good last year. He had moments of brilliance last year. I think he'll be more consistent this year.
What about the draft? Do you feel like did they get any guys who can come in and make an impact right away?
Well, their defensive line is always unique because they have a defensive line coach, Jim Washburn, who makes these guys a lot better than they are. They have a young man, Dave Ball from UCLA, who is a really good football player, number 98 for them, 99 for them. He rushes around the corner. He looks like Kyle Vandenbosch when you watch him play, and he'd been cut 3 or 4 times. I mean, they always find a way to get their defensive line to play at a high level because they know who they are. Their defensive line is critical to their success, and they do a great job of coaching it.
By the way, Vandenbosch on Detroit this year.
Looks new. He looks like a different player.
We're going to get to them, but I'm going to add that to my list of reasons I'm looking at them. AFC West quickly. San Diego minus 260, and then everybody else. Oakland's plus 5, KC's plus 6, and Denver's plus 7. Oakland, a little action. They were plus 600 last week, and now they're plus 500. Seems like everybody has written off Denver. Is that fair?
Well, I think Denver has a lot of injuries, and you can see it the other night. They don't have anybody who can replace Elvis Dumervil in terms of rushing the passer and being able to make plays in that. I think they could really cover well. Their secondary is outstanding in terms of their corners. They'll probably be a team that's able to trade a corner for something they need here in the next 6 or 7 days. So I think
they're a year away, it feels like.
They're a year away. But I like some of the young players, but they're hurt. Noshawn Moreno is very talented. Demarius Thomas is going to be a very good receiver for him. When I was there at practice, they were good. I like they're more physical. But I think all these teams, the other three are good. I think the Chargers have a chance to be much better. I think the Raiders' objective's got to be 7-9, not think they're going to become 11-5. And I think that's
You
really.
don't think they have any chance? Explain McFadden to me. This guy's just a bust? Write him off, or is he just?
I
not
think he's going to have
yet?
to prove to you that he can, because with Michael Bush's thumb injury, you can't have a running back with a thumb. You can't put a cast on it because he's going to fumble. So McFadden's going to get a lot of calls early in September. We're going to find out. Their offensive line is very suspect.
But how did McFadden? This guy was like a mortal lock, top 5 pick. Everybody thought he was going to be great. How is this guy like a non-factor?
Well, I think oftentimes with running backs, if they don't do a good job in pass protection, it's tough to keep them on the field all the time. It becomes very difficult. Then the Raiders, who get behind in games, can't really run the ball. Although they run the ball for stats, they don't really run the ball well. I think the Raiders' offensive line is the Achilles heel of the team. They're good on defense, but their depth is not great.
So you don't trust him?
No, I don't. I think I trust them to be 7-9. I really do. I think they can win. I think they'll be competitive, and I think there'll be 3 games during the season where the Raiders have to find a way to win. That they have to come down and win close games at the end with coaching, with discipline, with fundamentals, and I'm not sure they can do that.
KC writing him off?
I'm not sold on KC, especially on defense. I think they're much improved, but I don't think they're better. I think 6-10. I think if you're a Kansas City Chief fan, you want to be 6-6 going into December with a chance that your team's turning around. You look like there's a lot of hope. Matt Castle's come on. Dwayne Bowe looks like he can.
Can we say Matt Castle's come on? Is that an accurate statement?
Well, I think we're out of hope he can come on. And then I think you have a chance. But this offensive line's got to improve. They've got to be able to win games in their style. Whenever you have a team that only can win games in a certain style, they're not a good team.
You just started off a sentence, if you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan. I was going to finish it. You're probably drunk right now.
And that's Bill's phone ringing, by the way.
Yeah, that's my phone. Man, a lot of phones going off today. So you like San Diego. You're not worried about these holdouts, all this stuff.
No, the only holdout I'm worried about for San Diego is Marcus McNeil. I think Vincent Jackson is replaceable. I think he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. Last year you yelled at me when I made him a blue chip player. I think he's a really good player, but I think they have other weapons, especially Ryan Matthews now, to run the football with, and it'll open it up. Their play-action pass is what gets the ball down the field. They're one of the best play-action pass teams in the league.
I know, but Jackson was the best deep threat in the league, I felt. I thought the Rivers-Jackson combo was probably my favorite deep ball combo.
And I think there's going to have to be a receiver. As long as Rivers is there, there'll be another receiver that takes that giant Mother May I step forward.
There's some Ewing theory potential with Tomlinson out of there.
Yeah.
Major.
Yeah.
Almost too obvious. I don't even know if it qualifies. But I could see them going either 8-8 or like 14-2, and everybody being like, Tomlinson who? Look at this.
Well, this back is good, and his durability is the only question. If he stays healthy and the way they'll mix the 3 backs together, Mike Tolbert's another guy who is going to get a lot of carries, probably down the red area in the goal line. He's a good 245-pound back that they'll ram it in there with, and then you got Sproles, who's that great screen runner, and this team can run screens at the best of them. I think they're very talented. I think the question is, can they be able to hold up a corner again? With their pass rush is good enough. If Merriweather ever comes back to the level he ever was 2 years ago, then they have a legitimate chance.
They'll have to make sure he has the proper supplements to do that. Explain to me something as a front office expert. Why would San Diego not just stay where they were and take Javid Best? Why trade up to get Ryan Matthews? Is there really a difference between those two guys? Because I'm watching in the preseason, it seems like they're both going to be really good.
Yeah, well, Best is really good. I think the concern with Best was durability. Okay. I think Best slipped in the draft, much like Curtis Martin slipped in the 3rd round, because everybody knew he had great ability. They were concerned of the concussion, and that concussion he had at Cal, Javid Best, really scared people off medically. Oh, no, can we take it? Is he going to get hurt again? And I think that's why. I think certainly everybody loved it. But what Best did this summer is exactly what you have to do to play running back in the NFL. He pass protected on a blitz pickup early in the first preseason game. He blocked the blitzer. And once you do that, people fear you because you go out and catch the ball. Best is going to be a tremendous player. He's already made Detroit a much better offense.
I was really impressed by him. And I didn't realize the concussion was that serious of a deal, but for the Curtis Martin thing's a good comparison. Because where did he go in the 2nd round?
He went in the 3rd.
Oh, 3rd round. I'm sorry.
He went in the 3rd round. So he slipped all the way back. Yeah, and everybody knew he was talented. And
the other thing that was ridiculous was that Sue, who, I know Bradford, I know you need a QB, and I know it's a quarterback's league now, but It's really hard for me to accept that Sue could not be the number 1 pick in that draft because he's clearly going to be one of the best guys in the league now for 10 years.
Yeah, Sue looked like Warren Sapp the other day on TV. I mean, he's dominant.
It's an instant double team already.
And now,
announcers going crazy about him. I mean, he's a real deal.
Corey Williams is back playing defensive tackle, which is remember, he's a franchise player for the Packers, so he has talent. And then Van den Bosch, we talked about it. He's back to being the old Van den Bosch.
Here come the Lions.
Yeah, and their defensive line. Now, they're not great, but I think if they were in the NFC West, they win it.
Yeah, but that's not saying anything. I think you and me with 9 other guys win the NFC West. But, I mean, could they win 10 games?
I think it's hard because of the schedule, but they have the right team to win because to win in the NFC North, you've got to be offensive. You're not going to stop Aaron Rodgers. He throws the ball to receivers that are covered too well. So you got to be able to match him point for point. You got to be able to protect.
Well, we like Stafford, though.
Yeah, I think he can. I think that's why they have a capability of giving team problems. I think they're better than Chicago just because of their offense and their ability. I think they're better than Chicago right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. In fact, I'm willing to write off Chicago for as long as Jay Cutler is there. So in the NFC North, Green Bay minus 125, Minnesota plus 165, Detroit plus 1,500, and Chicago plus 500. Give me the odds that Minnesota goes like 6-10.
Well, I'm not in odds. I'm in the NFL. We don't even talk about odds.
No, I know you don't talk about odds, but say what are the percent? Like if you had to do a percentage pie,
I would say it would be difficult for. They're too good to go 6-10. I mean, I think
they have too much talent. No matter even if Harvin gets sidetracked with migraines,
and they can play the game. They can play the game left-handed and win. Their defense is too good. The dome really skews things in their favor.
What about Childress, though? I mean, he could certainly coach a 6-10 team.
He could coach them down to 6-10. Is what you're asking me.
Yeah.
But I think they have too much talent, and they play home with that crowd noise. It's a tough environment to play in.
It's one of the few home fields left.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that skews. I think they're an 8-8 team. I don't. Not an 8-8 team, but I think 8-8 would be the worst they could possibly be.
So you think even with all the injuries, they're a 10-6 team, but let's throw in now a really bad Favre ankle injury. Let's throw in a couple Brad Childress games. It's not that far-fetched for them to go from 10-6 to 6-10.
No, or Bryant McKinney doesn't play well.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden things fall apart. Look, last year they beat the 49ers on the desperation throw. There's a couple things. And down the stretch last year when they played on the road, they weren't very good. They lost the last 4 road games. Understand they could have easily won in New Orleans had they not turned the ball over. But they're going to have to prove they can win on the road late in the year, and that's where they'll fall apart if they ever fall apart.
Chew on this. Saints week 1, Thursday night. That's a loss. Pencil that in.
Yeah, but it's opening day, and I think
pencil it in. Defending champ always wins week 1.
People have to be very careful on opening day because nobody shows anything in the preseason. And I know we talked about, hey, the week 3 preseason teams are playing. They are, but they aren't. They're really not scheming as much as they want. They're not showing any new things that they've done. There's no new blitzes out there. Everything's old. So week 1 of the season, anybody can win against anybody because you can outfox somebody on opening day.
So but the Super Bowl champ always wins week 1. Yeah. That's just how it goes.
And you would think with the crowd noise, but see, the dome in New Orleans isn't as effective because it's so expansive. The Superdome, it isn't like Minnesota where it's really, I mean, it's loud, but it isn't like deafening loud. And I think Minnesota, they can handle it, the environment. Now, whether they play well enough, that'll be a different story.
I don't think they have one guy who's going to be able to get open in that game.
I think that's
they'd be throwing to Shanko 40 times.
I think that's the challenge. I think when you look at Minnesota without Sidney Rice, people are going to press coverage. And then I think
the Sidney Rice thing's a big deal. I don't understand why people are acting like it's a blip. Like this was their deep threat.
And then Javon Walker, people are acting like he's going to be a resurrected player.
Washed up 3 years ago.
Exactly. But when you look at Minnesota with Favre at quarterback, people are going to bring pressure. And if you can't get away from man coverage and you're bringing pressure, that's a problem.
Well, if they lose week 1, I've said this before, but they lose week 1, they got week 2, they got Miami coming in, which is always a tough matchup.
That's a physical game.
Physical game. Those are 2 physical games in a row. Now, granted, they have 10 days rest between the 2 games, but still, they start out 0-2.
That could be a problem.
That's 6, and then Brad Childress.
He'll go back. They'll go back to being a running team.
Yeah.
See, the one thing they'll do, they're like a baseball team that's on a losing streak. The theory is you put your best defensive players out there and try to win 1-0. I think that's what Minnesota will do. If they get any losing streak, you'll see Adrian Peterson about 35 times.
Would you say that Favre, if he didn't have this streak, maybe skips week 1?
Well, if he's taking shots already, and apparently that's been the report, certainly this problem's not going to go away whether he rests week 1 or doesn't.
Probably skips the first 3 and comes back for week 4 without the streak, right?
I would say, if you were, I didn't think he could play 16 last year, and I've said it to you.
Yeah.
So for him to play 16 next year, I would be shocked, especially at his age and especially with the ankle not being good. He's one hit away from not really being able to play. Now they got to do a good job.
Not being able to move. Not that he was
Right.
a guy who scrambled a lot anyway, but it reminds me of the Ripken thing a little bit, because I think Ripken's play the last few years of that streak really suffered because
the streak
he was
became bigger than him.
It ground him down. You look at his stats and they just weren't good the last few years, and he was slow on deep. And anytime he was banged up, he couldn't rest. And I wonder with Favre whether I know for a fact the team would be better off if he waited till he was healthy. If he's getting shots already and they're pulling chips out of his ankle and stuff, and we got 5 months to go here.
Right, and I think people are going to attack him. Typically, you don't want to attack Brett Favre because he can beat you. But if you have a sense that you can attack the pocket against him, you will.
NFC East, Dallas seems to be the consensus team. This wasn't the case before, and now they're even odds. Giants and Eagles are basically 3-1, and Redskins are 6-1. Why am I not sold on this Dallas team?
Because I think you realize that unless Des Bryant becomes the Des Bryant, a great player, they could really struggle offensively. People roll up on Roy Williams. He's not a great get away from press coverage guy. Doesn't really run. I mean, this Roy Williams as being a fast receiver is really not shows up on tape. He's not a fast receiver. And I think people are willing to challenge them a little bit more on their offense. So they really need Des Bryant to be that kind of difference maker to get some of the burden off of Miles Austin and let Miles,
who will be double teamed.
Yeah. So they need to become a little bit more diversified, and then they need to find out who they are with the offensive line. Their offensive line has struggled a little bit this summer, and they're going to have to prove they can handle it. And they're going to have to scheme. I mean, preseason, oftentimes people don't scheme well enough, so they're going to have to prove they can scheme, and Jason Garrett's going to have to prove that he can attack people the right way. But I still think they're the best team. The Giants have disappointed me this summer in a lot of areas. I think their offensive line is no longer the strength of their football team, and I still think their speed on defense is questionable.
And the Eagles, who I was really liking as a sleeper, and it just seems like Cobb might be a little rockier than maybe we thought coming out of the gate.
I think expectations for Philly have to be tempered a little bit. No different than when Aaron Rodgers took over for Brett Favre. Yeah, he's going to come in, he's going to play well, but there's going to be a learning experience and a learning curve, that there's going to be a couple weeks where he doesn't play as well as he did the week before.
Yep.
And people know how to attack him differently. And I think the Eagles' defense is not good enough to carry them to 10-6, nor do they have a running game to kind of help their quarterback out. They want to try to throw the ball. They're going to put the ball in his hands. They do a great job of game planning that, and they'll get receivers open. Jackson's got to stay healthy. There's a lot of things got to fall into place.
Transition year.
Yeah, that's why I look at Philly, because when you made the move with McNabb, you couldn't say, hey, we're making this move and we're going to go to the Super Bowl next year.
Yeah.
I don't see how those two things go hand in hand.
Also, the team that they had last year, it was gimmicky. They were almost like a fast break NBA offense that didn't know how to go half court. All they were doing was just chucking it.
Right.
And Dallas eventually just said, all right, we're just going to keep everybody back here. Why don't you try to run the ball on us? And they didn't, and that was it.
I mean, that's exactly what happened. They were the number one team in quick scoring drive, which is 4 plays or less. They were all about making big plays. And when they couldn't make big plays, they couldn't be consistent enough moving the ball. They couldn't go 12 plays and score. They go 12 plays, but maybe they have a breakdown and have to punt. They just didn't have enough consistency. They needed that big explosive play. Once they didn't get it, they struggled. I think the Eagles will be back to becoming a little bit more consistent in terms of trying to manufacture the clock, but I just don't know how good they are on defense.
All right, so we just wrote off the Giants and the Eagles, and neither of us really like the Cowboys that much. Does this mean the Redskins could potentially?
I think the Redskins will be in every game. They'll be well coached. The quarterback will play well. How well their offensive line holds up is going to be the question. Can the left tackle as a rookie handle it all? And certainly, they're going to be able to run the football. I don't think any of those older backs are really going to be the difference. I think Ryan Turan will be the back. I said it before.
They really brought back everybody in the planet, huh?
Right.
I'm surprised Mark Van Egan didn't get a call to try.
All bringing back old running backs do they're just old. They don't never rejuvenate themselves. And I'm anxious to see LT. Even though this summer he's looked like he's rejuvenated a little bit, the speed of the game's a lot different in the summer than it is in the fall.
Running backs, centers in the NBA, and porn stars. Once you pass the point, it's over. You're not bringing them back.
Yeah, I think
you pass the point and it's done.
I marvel at Shaq. When I watch him, I'm thinking, how could anybody pay him? And he's got 5 teams in the NBA want him.
I know.
So it's remarkable. It must be a difference maker, because when he's on the court, I'm thinking, God, he's killing the Cavaliers.
We didn't talk about the Lions quite enough.
Okay.
Because Schwartz we like.
I like Schwartz.
We like Stafford.
I like Stafford.
We like Best. We like their D-line. We like Calvin Johnson. It's just starting to add up. We like the fact that they haven't been good in 10 years, and if they show any signs of life, their fans are going to go crazy.
They're already crazy in Detroit.
There's some nice elements here.
One more thing to add to it. Scott Linehan's a really good play caller.
Yeah. This is his destiny. His destiny is to be an offensive coordinator.
And he's very good at it, and he's got this he's in this quarterback's head. The quarterback's done a great job. They can throw the ball. They can score in the red area because of these big receivers. They're a tough matchup. The back. Now, if they lose Best, and knock on wood they don't, but that'll really hurt them a little bit, because people have to understand the one-back runner in this spread offenses is what makes the spread. It isn't the receivers. People have to fear the back, and when the back can run the outside zone play or the inside zone play like Best can do, it creates more problems for the defense. And so Best is what really drives this train. I think Linehan's a great play caller. I think they're well coached in the offensive line. The team won't lose any games because Schwartz will mismanage the game. Defensively, their problems start in the back end, but they can score points.
It's okay. You can cheat that sometimes.
But they're never going to be out of games.
Right. So, possible scenario of maybe them going 4-1 and then Best getting hurt.
I think those are what the concerns, especially when you get a great player as a rookie. What's your first instinct is to give him more to do. And the more you give him to do, the more chance he has to get injured. Bill Walsh always believed that the rookie, don't make it too complicated for the rookie. Take things back. Don't give them more. Utilize them in a certain role. And Detroit doesn't have that luxury. They don't have another back that they can utilize to go along with Best to kind of bring Best back. Everybody wants C.J. Spiller to play 1,000 plays. No. C.J. Spiller would be more effective playing 400 plays than he would be playing 1,000 plays. Yeah. It's minutes in basketball. It's the same concept. And I think as rookies, that's what worries you. The more a coach sees a player, really good player, he wants him to do more. When the reality of have him do less, he'll be even better for you.
NFC South, Saints minus 200 and Falcons plus 200. Everybody else long shots. Falcons seem to fit that pattern of rookie coach, first year, new QB. Boom, we make the playoffs. Oh, this is great. We lose our playoff game. Year 2, high expectations. Crap, some stuff happened. We had some injuries. We had some bad luck. Or now year 3. Year 3 is perennially when this is the bounce back year. I kind of like the way they look. Yeah, I like what I'm reading about him.
I think Michael Turner is an inside runner now. And I think when they play people, he's going to have to prove he can get the corner. Right now, what I saw of him in the preseason is he's going to run between the tackles. Matt Ryan has got to become more consistent. He disappointed me specifically, against Miami. They won the game, but they really didn't dominate the game. He wasn't great. Gonzalez dropped more balls than I've ever seen him drop before this summer.
So you're not as high on him.
I'm a little concerned about the team that I think I've misevaluated so far. Carolina, because I really thought they did, and I've watched their defensive line this summer. Charles Johnson and Everett Brown have really taken a step up. We know they can run the football effectively.
And the quarterback might not be bad.
And he might not make the mistakes that kill him.
Yeah.
And they might be able to win ugly. They might be able to win 9 games ugly.
They got John Fox, they got Smith.
And I think Fox.
They can run it.
And like I told Fox, I think if you win 10 games with this team, you're coach of the decade. But I think they're a little bit better than I gave them. They're younger players.
When you say a little bit better, you mean a little bit better than 5-11, or a little bit better than 8-8?
I think they're much better than 5-11. I don't know if I don't know if this style can. When you play a certain style, good teams make you play away from your style. Tough to win. Yeah. Carolina doesn't have another way to go. They have one receiver. They're still searching for the second receiver. There's teams in the Southeast.
They've been searching for like 8 years.
There's teams
How hard is it to find a receiver?
There's teams in the Southeast Conference that have better set of receivers than the Panthers do. So, but they play uniquely, and defensively, he's coaching hard. John Fox, Ron Meeks is blending it in. They're much better than I thought they would be in their defensive front.
You had it when you did your blue chip thing. I think you put Fox in your elite group of coaches.
Absolutely, and they have good players now. The left tackle Jordan Gross is a blue chip player. The running backs are good. They have some elements of a football team. The middle linebacker's a good player. Now they moved him outside. So John Beeson's a really good player. They lose Thomas Davis, who was going to be their will linebacker, but they're good. They don't beat themselves. He's a really good coach. So I'm a little bit more impressed with them than I thought I would be.
I don't mind losing Peppers either.
No, I think they wanted to get rid of. I think Peppers had got to the point where
Yeah.
they needed to get young. Again, it goes back to that what I talked about earlier. We got to be able to practice to get better. When you have a lot of young guys, you can practice. When you have a lot of older vets, they don't want to practice. It's a conflicting problem with the team. Teams that get better practice. I mean, you see it. You probably see it in the NBA more, but I think probably the biggest dilemma an NBA coach has is how do I practice my team to improve it when I've got an older team?
That was the Celtics last year.
Yeah, you can't, it's hard to do.
Matt Moore, you study this stuff. You watch all the plays. You get to see the cool camera angles. What's his ceiling?
Well, I think we won't know his ceiling until they get better offensively.
But he was good those last 5 games.
He was very good around him, and I think he's still effective. He's accurate with the football. Steve Smith hasn't been with them all summer. They'll do enough in the running game to where he'll have easy throws. One thing you want a quarterback to be able to do is by having a great play-action pass game, which the Panthers do, it separates the defense. It makes it easier for the quarterback because the linebackers draw in, so there's separation of the defense. It's cleaner for them, high-low reads, and it makes it easier for him, and that's why I think he'll benefit from it.
You know, I always think of this when somebody shows their wares at the end of the season when the games don't mean anything, a quarterback. Like, you always think like the Rob Johnson example. Or there's even a better example, and I'm drawing a blank in the late 90s. Who was the guy who signed with
Scott Mitchell.
Scott Mitchell. So you always worry about that, and then Matt Moore, looked good enough that they're just like, all right, we're good with this guy. Do you think that's a factor, or am I overthinking it?
No, I think in this case, I think Jake's postseason game against the Cardinals destroyed this confidence in the locker room. I think part of the problem players have is with the locker room precision. I think Matt Leinert's problem.
Well, we talked about it a year ago. Jake had to go after that game. You have to send him out. There's no way you come back from that.
Yeah, and now you have to move.
It was a murder scene.
Exactly. Matt Leinart has to go from.
Has to leave. He has to go.
Nobody in Arizona's locker room is confident that he can be the quarterback. So once you've lost the locker room, where are you going? People say, oh, he can be a backup for what? Nobody believes that he can play. Larry Fitzgerald doesn't want him on the field when he's in the game because he thinks he's going to get hung out to dry on a deep ball.
Yeah.
So it's very concerning, and I think the fans miss that, and that's part of that goes back to the element of there's got to be a confident level in the locker room about who you are as a player.
When you're running the Raiders, you guys took Michael Huff over Leinart, and I remember emailing you and saying, what the F?
Yeah.
How do you pass up Leinart? This guy's going to be great. It's like you knew something.
Well, I wish I would have said that. I mean, to pick a safety there is always, was something that I'm not sure is the right thing to do in this day and age.
Well, how did Michael Huff turn out?
I would say iffy. We didn't really
Above average or average?
I would say average right now at best. Vince Young, had he been there, we would have picked him.
Yeah.
Because I think he would have given a unique sense. But looking back on that, the quarterback when you take a quarterback, you got to make sure you have the right coach. That's why Scott Linehan's so valuable to Jim Schwartz, because he's the right coach for what he does. Mike McCarthy, he's sitting in San Francisco's draft room. They pick Alex Smith. Aaron Rodgers goes to Green Bay. The next year, he's now coaching Aaron Rodgers and making him a better player. People say, well, why didn't he have him picked for the 49ers? Well, circumstances change, and you have to have the right guy coaching the right player.
Well, Leinart's problem is a basic problem, is that he's just not accurate.
Yeah.
And when you're not accurate, it all starts from there. If you can't throw the ball from point A to point B, you're not going to be good.
Right, and I'm
going out on a limb with that statement.
Yeah, you're right. And like baseball that uses the aluminum bats, you might hit long home runs in baseball. College football, Leinart's accuracy didn't show up as much because the zone was wider.
Yeah.
But now that the zone sinks and it's got to be pinpoint laser-like accuracy in the NFL, he really shows his deficiency in being able to control the football.
I'm going to say 78% confidence how you carry yourself, 21% accuracy, 1% you just can't be a moron.
Right.
Just don't have an IQ under 80.
Right.
You have those three things, you're going to succeed as an NFL quarterback.
And you got to be able to say to the guy, hey, if you're there, I'll put the ball on you. And you can't hang a guy out to dry.
Right.
And a guy can't know where the ball's going to go to. And I think that's part of the problem is they're not sure where he's going to throw the ball.
Yeah.
On any level, short, long, or short, medium, or long.
It's like my son is toilet training, and when he pees, and really the entire bathroom's in play, that's Matt Leinart. The NFC West, so we got to rule out. We're going to rule out the Rams anyway, but then Donnie Avery gets hurt, and now it's a disaster. I mean, could there be a worse injury for them?
I think when you look at the Rams and how they've built their team the last 5 years, it's been a disaster. And I think
have you written the complete column about? I mean, you mention it, you throw the facts out, but you really have to delve into that, like CSI style.
Yeah, it's
you got to go through those drafts. I mean, they have nobody left from what, the 07 draft? It was 3 years ago.
And they have basically Chris Long, Jason Smith, the new right tackle.
And you don't like Chris Long that much.
No, and nor do I like Jason Smith, their right tackle. So the last 2 picks, this hasn't just been
These are top 3 picks.
Yeah, this hasn't been a fender bender recently. This has been a pattern of bad driving for a while. So no, that's a whole column. The problem is, I'm sure the editors at NFL.com said, well, nobody really cares about the Rams, so why write the story?
No, see, I think you should write that column. I think people would want to read that because I think other than what Matt Millen did with the wide receiver picks, at least there were a couple other rounds where he picked decent guys. Like, this is much more negligent.
The Rams are 0 for the people running the Rams prior to Stan Kroenke showing up could be arrested in football jail. I mean,
this is a playoff team. I mean, you almost can't. You just have 2 guys a year, and you're going to be half decent.
And poor Mike Martz, and nobody wants to defend Mike, but I will. Poor Mike Martz was run out of town for basically all this. Now they blame Mike for all the problems, but since Mike's left, the problems has remained. So that tells you he wasn't all the problem.
You might be Martz's last fan at this point.
Might be.
It's like the people who still go to M. Night Shyamalan movies. Oh, no, this one's going to be good. All right, so ruling out the Rams. The Niners are minus 170 in that division. The Cards are plus 250. The Leinart action, I mean, the Cards were the leading favorite in that division like 3 weeks ago, and Leinart's preseason has just terrified everybody.
Well, how can you be a Cardinal? I mean, they have a really good football team. Their offensive line has not looked good this summer, but part of that problem is the quarterback holding on to the football. Their line hasn't played well, but how can you when you lose a blue-chip quarterback, this is a quarterback league, you lose your best player, how do you come back from that?
Would you say that they have the worst quarterback situation in the league?
Yes.
Is there anybody you'd put worse than them? I mean, Tampa, Josh Freeman, and then Buffalo, Trent Edwards. Joe Meade, you still alive?
Yeah, I'm here.
Would you rather have Josh Freeman, the Matt Leinart, Derek Anderson combo, or Senator Trent Edwards?
With a bad offensive line, I don't know who to pick. I mean, I think Edwards would be pretty good if the Bills had anything with an offensive line, but since they don't, I want someone more mobile.
So you'd want Freeman?
Yeah, that's my guy.
But see, if Derek Anderson can at least give him the Dave Kingman type of 3-run home.
He's terrible.
But if he
was terrible last year.
But if he can hit that home run, that deep ball, I mean, he's never going to He's never going to throw from 55% completion. Forget that. But he's got these receivers. If he can make he went to the Pro Bowl in 2007 because Braylon Edwards scored 16 touchdowns.
Yeah.
If they can get just that out of him, they could be a much better team.
I had a riff last year in a column about winning ugly. The Browns won some games 6-3. It was like the worst game ever played, and Derek Anderson had a QB rating of -1 million and somehow won. And I was like, winning ugly. Those are Derek Anderson conditions.
Yeah, and that's
because he's just an ugly football player.
And Carolina's going to have to win ugly this year too.
Yeah. Well, Arizona now plus 250, and the Niners, everybody's swing behind them. They're minus 170 right now. The Seahawks have dropped to plus 400. You mentioned that you think they have less talent than anybody in the league. You stand by that?
I stand by. I just don't think they're a very good team. Now, certainly they're Tutufu inside helps them to get him back. But this is not a well-constructed football team, especially on both sides of the ball. I think it's going to take Pete Carroll some time to develop it. I'm not sure Matt Hasselbeck can hold up. I don't know what area of strength you say, hey, when I look at Seattle, I see this is the strength I see. Let's play on that.
This is their wheelhouse.
Yeah, they don't have a wheelhouse. That whole NFC West, I mean, now the 49ers have a wheelhouse. Their defense is really good.
Right.
But Pete's up there for a reason. Pete took over because poor Jim Mara walked into a situation. He thought the team was going to keep being a playoff team when they didn't realize they needed to rebuild the football team.
Right.
Again, it falls back and evaluate your own players. And they did a bad job there.
Who's the offensive rookie of the year?
Well, I think if Best stays healthy for 16 games, he's the rookie of the year. Or Ryan Matthews at the
Javid Best plus 650. You're not allowed to talk about odds, but I can. And Ryan Matthews plus 450. Who's the MVP
of the league?
Yeah.
I think if Aaron Rodgers plays like he has so far this summer, he's the MVP of the league.
Plus 1,200.
You can tell I don't pay attention to it.
The best odds are Breeze at Manning is plus 500, Breeze 700. Romo is 800. That's ridiculous. I'll take the Romo. If anyone wants to bet on Romo plus 800, I'll take that action. Let's see if anyone else. Alex Smith plus 3,000. I'll take that action too if you want to put that in with me. Rodgers plus 1,200. It seems like he would be one of the three favorites.
And they got a very good – their offense is good. And Mike McCarthy's a really good play caller and a designer. I think they don't get enough credit for that. And if Capers can design the defense to complement this offense, which it should be able to do, they'll be tough to beat. And I don't want to hear about cold weather because the Packers can throw the ball effectively in cold weather anyway.
Most important question I'm going to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
What conference is better?
I think the AFC has a lot better teams overall. I think
because that is a key for when you pick games. You got to target which if they and it might not be, they might be even. But sometimes if it's lopsided, that's huge.
I can't tell you who's going. I like Miami in the East. I don't know if they can hold it, but I think there's 3 good teams in the East. I think there's 3 really good teams in the North. I think there's 3 good teams in the South, and I think the West has 1 good team. So
the two West cancel each other out, and San Diego's better than anybody in the NFC West.
Yeah, so that's why I go. But I think look, the NFL. There's a lot of close games, and the coaching has got that's why there's 3 games every year. If you're a fan of your team, your coach has got to find a way to win the game when maybe you're not playing your best.
The Super Bowl odd, the AFC is a -1.5 favorite over the NFC. Seems like that should be 3.
I have no idea. I don't even know who the teams are.
Well, but I'm saying, like, if you had to guess.
Well, but, look, last year...
The upside of the AFC seems a little higher than the upside of the NFC, or maybe I'm crazy.
There's a lot more teams. When you have a league that has 10 quarterbacks to throw for 4,000 yards, that means you have a lot of good teams.
Yeah, that's true. And then finally, Super Bowl. Sounds like you're leaning toward Green Bay and the Indianapolis Colts.
I think Green Bay, Indianapolis, I think San Diego could. I think one of those teams from the.
Wow, I'm glad you're touting San Diego because everybody was writing them off, and you're the first person I've heard.
San Diego's going to be hard to beat. North Turner's a really good play caller. We're talking about play callers. Yeah. He's a really good play caller, and he's got a legitimate running back now. Something he hasn't really had the last couple of years. I know LT fans out there, but they believe in him. They didn't believe in LT in the past, so we're going to
screw the LT fans. They're all in denial.
So I think the Chargers are a team that, especially if they get Marcus McNeil back, it's tough to win in the league without a left tackle. But I like them. I like the East. I like Miami. I think Miami has a unique team because they're really tough to play. Too. And I think Henny's really good.
Yeah, they're going to be interesting. And, I think there's a couple games in those first 2 weeks that after, like, week 2, it's a little early this year. Usually it's week 4. I think after week 2 this year, we're going to have a good feel.
Henny, to me, there's not a dramatic difference between Henny and Joe Flacco in terms of how they were picked.
Right.
And I think that's why Henny's got to really, if he can step up, I think he'll really be a factor.
I'm looking up the week 2 slate. Because week 1, as you pointed out,
the whole month of
crapshoot, you never know.
Yeah,
who knows who's
we weren't expecting that from you. We didn't know you were going to run that.
We didn't know this guy was this good.
Yeah.
So then week 2, so we have Baltimore at Cincinnati.
See,
that's a nice one.
And when you have these teams like the AFC East, like the Jets will be at the Patriots are at the Jets week 2. So
Pats at Jets, Buffalo, Green Bay, Pittsburgh at Tennessee, Jacksonville at San Diego, Giants at Indy, and then Saints at Niners.
It really is a war of attrition, and if you're not able to hold on, you can't do it. You have to have depth on your team, and you have to have uniqueness in your team to play the opponent you have to play. You have to have that style to play right or left-handed. You just can't be a one-dimensional team to last 16 weeks.
You buying the Niners?
No, because they're a one-dimensional team.
Not buying them, selling.
Well, I'm buying them to make the playoffs. I think they're a good team. I think defensively they can hold up.
If you pick them to make the playoffs, you're buying them.
Well.
That's a buy. You just purchased them.
And I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender team.
No, I don't either.
When they get there, they don't have enough. They don't have enough. They're dominant in what they do, but they're not great. They're not able to overcome. And when you get in the playoffs, you got to be able to do a couple things.
Is there a potential Miles Austin this year? Not on the Niners in general. Is there a guy that you think could make that jump to the 4-figure receiving yard category and 10 TDs that nobody's talking about?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that
seems like there's one every year.
There really is one every year.
Vincent Jackson was the guy a couple years ago. Miles last year.
That's a good question. Green Bay has so many good. It all is going to fall to the quarterback.
Well, Devery Henderson last year. So if an offense is going to score points, odds are somebody's going to have to actually physically score the points. So who would be the Green Bay guy? I mean, everybody likes Jennings, but is there another guy they have?
Well, Jermichael Finley's going to catch so many, but he's a matchup.
Who's third receiver?
Donald Driver will be another guy in play, and then James Jones, the other receiver, is very hard to tackle.
James Jones.
He's hard to tackle. He's hard to get on the ground. I would say if the Bears are any good, I would say the sleeper receiver is the
guy with the name that nobody can pronounce?
No.
Amama Shandu?
No, it's the other one. It's the one from West Texas. Oh, no, I just drew a blank on his name. But they drafted him in the 5th round last year. He's an explosive player.
I know who you're talking about, and I'm drawing a blank too. How about Jacoby Jones?
I think, well, with their offense is everybody gets the ball, but Johnson's going to always get the ball.
Yeah.
So you got some weeks Kevin Walter's going to make plays, and I have Java Best on the mind now. I can't remember the receiver, but I think he's really going to be a very good player for them.
All right, spoiler alert. You get 1 minute to talk about Mad Men.
I think the show's fascinating. I think it's incredible, the direction. I think Peggy's fascinating as a character. I think the writing is...
Peggy's, when you think like first episode, first season, how much she's changed?
I think it's incredible. I think the little girl, I would adopt the little girl. I feel
Sally
bad for
Draper?
her.
Yeah.
I feel so bad for her to have a mother like her. And I think as much as I want to see January Jones on screen, I like her less each time she is on screen.
I know, it almost is like hurting her in real life.
Yeah.
Like I feel like she might be really like this.
She wears that weird dress to the Emmys, and then I'm like, no big deal. I really didn't want to see anyway because she's just a mean to that little girl.
Hendricks brought the heavy artillery out.
She brought her A game. I thought her character, thank God for Roger Sterling to replace Uncle Junior now in our lives. It's given us some...
You're right. That's a good comparison.
Given us some hilarious that we can utter a statement and quote him all the time. So I think the show is fabulous. The writing is just unbelievably incredible.
I really liked the last episode.
Yeah.
I liked the before and after with Draper. I love that he was drunk at the pitch meeting, was just, and he's awkwardly hitting on women now who are turning him down. It's really Tiger. It's Tiger Woods on the small screen.
And I like the return of Duck Phillips, drunk as getting up there. They had to pull him off the stage. The man who put the deal together, and now he's going off there. So I think that show is so well written that, it's remarkable.
You'll never love a show ever as much as The Sopranos because it was the Italian thing, the New Jersey Philly thing, but this is 80% there.
Yeah, and part of The Sopranos that made it so fun was that the older people in The Sopranos reminded me of my grandparents.
Right.
Not from the criminal aspect, but just their behavior, their dress. I think Chase had it down to it was like he was in your living room, and I think every Italian, even though we don't like the organized crime element of what he did, every Italian realizes that was very similar. That kitchen and behind the pork store, everybody had that kind of thing in their home, so it was very authentic.
Yeah, as a half Italian who my mom saw it all the way back, like that was... I just think if you have any Italian blood and you've grown up with any of that, it pushed the show to another level. Yeah. Not that it wasn't great anyway.
And you got me on The Wire, and I've got all, for all these cross-country flights, The Wire just keeps growing on you every time you watch it.
What season are you in?
I'm going back through. I'm watching the last season again, and the writing in that is incredible.
Breaking Bad?
Haven't got on that. I gotta start downloading that.
Through a season, it was great.
My wife watched that, and I have to watch that.
Good one. I'm really worried about this season, though, because it seems like when you're talking about like appointment dramas, because I was a Lost guy. I'm not sure you probably weren't.
No, my son loved that show.
The Event has a little promise by the makers of 24. It's got that kind of a huge thing and people trying to stop. Might be it, but other than that, I'm really not excited about any network shows.
I'm excited about Boardwalk Empire because it's close to where I grew up in Ocean City.
See, I feel like this could be
a disaster.
It feels like Joe Gibbs coming back to the Redskins.
Maybe we need Al Saunders to come help Martin Scorsese.
Don't worry. It looks too good on paper, and then you think like, Scorsese. He's pretty old now, mid-60s.
Yeah, but I thought Shutter Island was
slumming
good.
it on cable.
I like Shutter Island. I was maybe one of the few. I thought it was really a good movie.
Oh. Well, you should have told them they needed you for the poster. They didn't have enough blurbs for it. Mike Lombardi. So next we'll do it in a couple weeks. What, like after week 2?
Absolutely. Yeah, week 2.
Oh, I forgot. Last question. What are you most excited for the 2010 season? Yeah, the thing you're most that trumps everything else.
I think that makes me always excited about the NFL season is the curiosity about what team has changed and defined themselves as differently from the offseason as a personnel guy. And initially, that's what I always will be, is how a team has made the moves systematically to improve their team and how it looks on paper. It's one thing to be an architect and have a blueprint, but to build the house is fascinating, and that's what I like watching about the teams. And then the great thing about it is you can learn from them.
It's also my favorite thing, but for a different reason. I just like trying to figure out the sleeper. And I think I've narrowed it down to Carolina, Oakland, and Detroit.
Yeah,
that's my final 3. It's because it's got to be out of the pool of teams that nobody's talking about, nobody's discussing. They sucked last year, long shot odds to compete for the division, and then easy schedule. They like what happened with Denver last year, and then they just had too many injuries that could sustain.
I think the us against the world mentality is something you always want to play, and I think the Raiders, when they have success, I've always cautioned about that. Will they slip? But the Denver, the Carolina, the Butler effect. I think those teams always, it's us against them. Nobody thinks we're any good. When a coach can stand in front of a team and say, everybody thinks you stink. Look at this quote. Lombardi wrote, you guys are no good, or Bill Simmons writes, you're no good. And then that gives them, the people will pay attention to them and they'll listen, and then they can it drives them. It bonds teams together.
Fox can pull that off, and I think Schwartz can too. I don't think Cable can.
Yeah, I think he can. I think that they have the quarterback. Detroit has the quarterback to put it all together.
Right. And if Matt Moore is
John Fox doesn't
better
want
than competent,
he wants a better punter than a better quarterback.
But I'm saying as long as he can steer the ship without hitting an iceberg,
yeah,
that's great for them.
I think so.
All right, Mike Lombardi, NFL.com. How often you writing?
3 times a week. NFL.com and NFL Network all week here.
And you're on TV. All right, good. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Podcenter at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.
This concludes another installment of the BS Report. And with all the talk about sports, Bill Simmons neglected to mention this very important final thought. Eat bold with Subway fiery footlong subs. So hot they'll burn the wimp right out of you. Like the intensely delicious new turkey jalapeno melt. A fiery twist on a legendary flavor with bubbly Monterey cheddar and spicy chipotle Southwest sauce. And the backed by popular demand buffalo chicken fiery footlong sub with fire grilled chicken smothered in smoking red hot sauce. Subway fiery footlong subs. They're boldest yet. Subway. Eat fresh.